Hello and welcome to 2020. It's been a while.
Well, it's been since 2019.
Well, I mean, it sounds like a long time.
True, it's a month.
But
We're a month
like
in.
a month. That's right.
That's it.
That's right. But it's, I mean, I keep seeing things that January felt like 10 years, and it did for some reason. From the first to the end, it felt there's a lot going on. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Though you're on leave this semester.
Actually, I'm not. No longer. No, for reasons that it's too complicated to get into.
In the meantime, there are some people who are on break.
That's true. They are. Nice link. I like that one.
Thank you.
So here's what I'm going to say by way of introduction. See if we can get where this is going. So there's some people that have been together as a people for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they were part of a larger organization. And eventually, some people there decided to act up and act out. Mm-hmm. And eventually, they decided they needed to split up and find their own way. And, there's been a great deal of controversy in the country about this, and the newspapers got whipped up into a frenzy.
Yes.
But now it's finally done. It's finally done, and it's over. Now, I could be talking about Brexit, but I'm actually talking about Megxit.
Whoa. Now my brain has really exploded.
Exactly.
Or it could be the plot of a really great movie coming up.
I think Benedict Cumberbatch did that movie because they did the movie about Brexit, which is actually pretty amazing.
It is a pretty good movie, yeah.
Anyway, point is, Megxit. So I was listening to The Daily, the New York Times thing. They had this a wee while ago when they first said they're leaving. And the Daily Mail, who's like the most horrible newspaper in Britain, totally sort of, how can I put it, sotto voce racism meets flag-waving conservatism, right? Yeah. They had 17 pages on the Meghan Markle departure. Like, there's no other news, right? Nothing else. Impeachment's going on, whatever. The dinosaurs have been wiped out again, right? Nobody cares, right? It's just this stuff. Total frenzy about this thing. So it turns out they're leaving, all the rest of it. And what they did on the Daily was fascinating, and I totally agreed with this. So I encourage people to find it and listen to it. At the end of it, they said, it's kind of funny. The same forces that in part drove Brexit also drove Megxit, which is the presumption of the marriage of those two was that Britain is a multicultural society that's completely tolerant of mixed race marriages and so on and so forth. And even these old frosty institutions have bent to the time and look at the wedding. But actually there were millions of people who were horrified and thought this was terrible and so on and so forth, and have been trying to get out of things for the longest time and want traditional values and why can't it be like it was back in the 50s, etc. And in many ways it's the same people, particularly if you look at the age skew, both what we saw in the referendum for Brexit and in the last election, is a tremendous difference between young people and old people on this. And basically older conservative people who drove the Brexit vote. Also, if you go by the analysis of the media, etc., and who reads what papers and how they played soft voice racism with her, etc., it's the same forces. So Megxit, Brexit, all of a piece. In a way. I came back from Germany last Friday, was it? I think it was. Yes, it was Friday. So I left Germany on the day that the United Kingdom left the European Union.
The 31st.
I literally Brexited Germany.
You did.
and you know what was different?
You're still alive.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all.
Did your family do they still have food?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Scotland?
they've actually, nobody has food in Scotland. That's an entirely different thing. Okay. No, we just drink and murder each other. But no, nothing has changed at all. So the next year is, we'll see what happens. But so far, nothing changes. But we'll see where it goes.
Well, what's interesting, just to pull on this thread a little bit more, because I just look at it on the internet, the Daily Mail, so I don't know that there's 17 pages because I'm just using total clickbait. But just the coverage between Meghan and Kate, and so just the throwback to we want people, we want a time when people, knew who they were and the categories all fit. I mean, just the headlines that, Kate is now held up as this like savior for the royal family. Of course, Meghan is the villain in this. I mean, just that sort of stuff, just the headlines.
Well, one they mentioned on the Daily broadcast, and I heard this before, was that 3 months prior to running a story on Meghan, they did one on Kate and her love of avocados.
Yes, avocado,
and they're just wonderful, and it's like her, and this is so great, and it's wonderful for your skin and all that sort of stuff. And then they do one on Meghan, her love of avocados is destroying the planet, right? And that was just absolutely typical of the type of polarizing coverage that went on. So anyway, they're out. They're going to Canada, which seems like a sensible thing to do. They'll make billions. I mean, all he has to do is write a book and he'll make $1 billion.
Yes.
And she'll go back into acting and everyone will be furious and they won't care.
Yeah. Because they'll be making billions and billions of dollars.
Exactly. Which is what they also tell you about Brexit, but we'll see if that one's true.
Maybe they can lend some money to the UK as they're making money.
No, that would be good. That'd be a nice sort of, reparations for leaving.
Yeah.
How's the irony on that one?
I mean, so the people supporting Megxit and Brexit are just young and they're just like none of this stuff.
Yeah, none of
these
stuff
structures
really matters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And everyone else is hearkening back to this prior era, this golden age of everything. Well, speaking of a golden age, I don't know. I mean, you were lucky, but maybe not.
I missed it all. You had to endure it.
I mean, were you watching the impeachment?
No.
Of the actual stuff?
Not a thing.
I mean, I tried, but first of all, it's such a snooze fest. It's like so boring and reading the rules and like all that sort of stuff. I know some of our engineers were listening and watching, but it was just hard to like keep up, and especially that they went for so long. But I just had a couple takeaways, mine from away from the politics of it, and that was as a political nut, I always like to sort of see the tensions between the two branches, between the House and the Senate. And for me, that was what was on display as much as anything. And just the Senate, this narrative around we're having to do the House's work if we call in witnesses and the House didn't do their job. And we're having to sit here and listen to all of this and bring in the Supreme Court. I mean, it's always this total and utter looking down at the House and this like that body that just does stuff, but they don't actually seem to produce anything. So I thought that was interesting. Just the interbranch rivalry that was on full display. And then I got really I felt bad for John Roberts, and my friends were like, I think he's just fine, but I just felt bad for him having to sit up there and preside over this thing, and like he did
bored. Give us a word.
Yes.
You remember the word?
No.
Pettifog.
Oh. I didn't know. I must have missed that.
He accused people of pettifogging.
Oh, yes. I do remember that.
Yes. Which was then picked up by other people in the press showing that they were listening and they had a clever new adjective to play with.
Yes. And that was
my takeaway, pettifog.
From the impeachment hearings.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I guess we're headed to some sort of vote, I think, maybe this week. I'm not sure. I mean, this week is a busy week. We have Iowa today, State of the Union tomorrow. Wednesday, if we get through Tuesday, something happens. I can't remember what it is.
But isn't it also
the vote
preordained in a sense? So, I mean, I hate to be, terribly structuralist about it, but it is my bent, right?
Yeah.
You're the voice of hope in agency, and I'm like,
oh,
no. So, as we've said before, the Republican Party now is completely beholden to Trump.
Yeah.
So if he turns against you, you're done. Because the base elite you alive.
Yep, one tweet, yep.
So you have to go along with the guy. So, anyone that's standing against them, Lamar, Alexander, whatever, in any type of little criticism, they're retiring. They're kind of self-primaring, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to sail through. It's pretty safe bet that the Democrats are not going to win the Senate anytime soon. So the Democrats, of course, look like Bernie's got momentum, which means the knives will be out and he will be stabbed in the back in about the next 6 weeks, which will demobilize their base. I mean, you can see where all this is going, right? So Trump's basically about to give a State of the Union. And as far as he's concerned, the State of the Union looks awesome. My enemies are in disarray. They can't stand each other. You tried to impeach me. Nothing happened. My guys are 100% my guys, and nothing much is going to change.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with that reading?
No, and I think even more so is that Trump is about the spectacle. I mean, saw on the Twitter sphere that it doesn't matter who the Democrats put up because he's not running on policy or ethics or anything, right? He's just running on the spectacle, and that fill in the blank person minus a few candidates, they have all these controversies. They have controversies. They have skeletons, and it's Hillary and the emails over and over again. There was no substance. It was just that there was something smelled bad, and so that's where he gets people, and his base loves that. I mean, he added more countries last week. I mean, clearly politically motivated to the travel ban.
It's an So there was a piece by Thomas Piketty, the economist, last year about how, political scientists have known this forever, but a thing's not a thing till it's said by an economist, right? That elections are won by tiny, tiny margins, like no shit Sherlock, right? But it's become increasingly true, right? That's the thing. So one way to think about the strategy that Trump is playing is, no one over the past 3.5 years said, I was really against that guy, but I've kind of warmed to him, right?
Yeah.
That's just not happening. So his thing is basically make the people that voted for him absolutely furious all the time and make sure they show up.
Yeah.
And then watch the opposition divide and conquer amongst themselves.
That's exactly right.
And that tiny majority is right there.
Well, and I think already the backlash, the stabbing of Bernie, I mean, in the front and the back has already happened in the editorial pages of the major newspapers.
And then there was something about a rules change, right? What was that?
Yes. Wait, are you going to buy Piketty's new book?
Yeah, I will. And like everybody else, I'll pretend. No, I will actually read it. I actually read these things. It
You
will
don't
take
stop
me a
at
month.
page 1? Yeah.
No, it'll take me a month.
Okay.
Is it out yet?
Yeah, I think I just saw it. Or maybe it's out in the UK at least.
Yeah, I don't think it's out here yet.
Okay.
No, I think they have to ship it over. It weighs so much. I'll probably get here in 3 months.
Yeah, and then you'll like accidentally hurt your back.
Exactly, picking it up.
Yeah. The rules changed by the DNC. They just passed these new rules. So like last year, December 2019, you had to have a certain number of small donors. And then the rules changed. The DNC says that this was always going to happen once the voting started to happen.
Once it became apparent that Bernie was still alive.
Yeah, exactly. As soon as we saw who the front runner was. But now those fundraising metrics have gone away, and it's the poll stuff, and if you have a delegate from either New Hampshire or Iowa, which lets in, drumroll please, Mike Bloomberg. Mayor Mike, our friendly trillionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
So, of course, there's all these conspiracy theories around it. But I just, Super Bowl last night, and they were hitting, the Trump campaign was hitting Mike Bloomberg, saying that he wanted a box to stand on for the debates. And the Bloomberg campaign hit back and said that that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He lies about his obesity, he lies about his fake tan, and he lies about his hair. And I thought, that's the kind of candidate I want. Someone who hits him back, not on anything substance, but just in the same way that Trump hits you, that you're a shorter man, Mike Bloomberg, and want to stand on a box. Well, I'm going to hit you on all of these things. So maybe I'm pro Mike now.
Excellent. So that's what it's come down to. Your defense of the Constitution of the Republic has come down to the fact that basically stuff policy, he's gone for the fake tan. That's my guy.
Exactly. Democratic norms are really about fake tans.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah.
I'm less confident than ever. Thanks very much.
Doesn't this underline your point that you just made, which is that the infighting the Democratic Party to have a Bloomberg on the stage with an Elizabeth Warren, isn't that just like everything?
So if imagine you take the three, so substitute Warren for Sanders, right? And you've got basically that part of the American population that swings left populist, right? Then you've got everybody trying to catch a much denuded and illusory center. So basically suburban Atlanta, right? That's your imaginary, right? And that's where people like, Buttigieg or whatever are there, and they just don't seem to have an attraction. Then you have someone like Bloomberg, right? So I'm kind of the anti-Trump. I ran New York for 3 years. I've got my own money. I'm even richer than you. Get lost, right?
Yeah.
So my demagogue's better than your demagogue. And then you got Trump. Right, and that's it. And in a way, it's kind of a nice sort of way to cut up, if you will, the polarized preferences of the electorate. This is what you get because this is who we are.
But then aren't Trump and Bloomberg the same candidate?
Explain.
With different words that, I mean, they're both similar backgrounds. One's richer than the other, but I mean, they're both, background wise, they're essentially the same. And one is like more one says stuff that's more controversial, but I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't see Mike enforcing border camps and, kiddie separations. And, he actually just said that he's kind of in favor of a quasi wealth tax.
Yeah.
So, there are substantive differences with Trump in that regard.
Well, and I guess I have to think it's the Trump administration. I don't know if Donald Trump actually stands for anything.
Well, that's a very good question. Wasn't he actually a Democrat for a large part of his life?
Yeah, I think he was.
Morally flexible, politically bendy. There we go.
That's a great.
That should be a bumper sticker.
Yes,
actually, maybe that's our new podcast. Morally flexible, politically bendy.
I do like that.
I actually came up with that line. I was in the gym ages ago, and there's a woman who's got about 20 years on me, and she must have been, literally a ballerina or a gymnast when she was younger, and she could, just bend her legs around her neck and all the rest of it. And I got to know her a little bit, and I came in one day and I was all stiff. And she says, you should stretch more. And I says, look, I'll never match you in physical flexibility, but in moral flexibility, I've got you hands down.
Yeah, that's right. I like how you outed yourself in that way.
I did.
So Iowa's tomorrow. I have to just bring up this thing about reporters going to Iowa because, I listen to the radio and the TV coverage. And I mean, there's this article in the paper last week about how in Iowa, Amy Klobuchar is doing all these house visits. And this is going to blow your mind as they serve casserole there.
They don't, do they?
And I don't know if you know what casserole is.
Oh, yeah, because when I grew up in Scotland, every Sunday we put chicken or something like that in a casserole. Like the pot roast casserole tradition is something that basically unites boring middle-class and working-class white people everywhere. And sometimes it's delicious. Well, we'd call the dish a casserole.
Okay.
But we'd call it a roast, but it's not really a roast because basically it's poaching. It's kind of braising at the same time. You stick vegetables in it and all that. Yeah. Personally, I'm a huge fan of a good chicken casserole.
Well, I grew up in the Midwest, and so I know casserole. It's right because it's hot and noodly, and there's.
Oh, yours have noodles?
Yes, with some meat. Yeah, but usually it's like canned soup, which is the creamy part, and then a noodle. Like the egg noodles and then
what culinary war crime are you describing to me?
I mean, it's delicious. It's filling on a cold winter's night.
Okay.
But for me, it's just also, as someone who grew up in the Midwest, it's always a symbol of like, yes, people eat food in Iowa.
Right.
Oh my God.
They're actually, those people are people.
I know, they drive cars. They're not just toothless there. And so, people talk about changing Iowa, but I think the media establishment will never allow that because they want to go talk about the cold and the snow.
Somewhere quirky with these weird people who eat casserole.
Yeah. And I'm talking to Linda. Her husband, Dave, is a farmer. And you're like, but they're just like kind of, they have.
But don't they set themselves up for it? I mean, couldn't Iowa just turn around and go, oh, come on, can we not do this for one electoral cycle? Can we just give the honour to someone else so that we're not inundated with all these morons from the coast?
I mean, seriously. I mean, I do not do this in New Hampshire. I know there's all sorts of spooks on this, but every 4 years, I just kind of think, I mean, poor Iowa, that all these like people are tromping through.
Maybe it's kind of like the Edinburgh Festival, right? Yeah. So in August every year, people who have property in Edinburgh let it out for like £70 billion pounds because all these comedians and artists show up for 3 weeks so you can let it out and it's great. So maybe this is the same thing. Maybe like you're letting it out to all these news crews and stuff like that. And it's like, I made a fortune for 20 years. I rented to Dan Rather, right? Maybe that's what was going on. The whole thing's basically it's a proto Airbnb scam.
I think that's a great way to think about it. Like, people can make some money out from the people and their like winter jacket they wear once every 4 years.
Exactly.
But anyway, that was I was thinking a lot about that. And I just get so annoyed at the coverage of like, oh my God, casserole and trucks and farms and like, fried butter. And you're like, yes. People do eat odd things. Actually, around the world, people eat odd things. They eat
very odd things. Yes. And sometimes they eat things they're not meant to.
And in wild animal markets around the world, maybe you contract a terrible disease.
And then random viruses cross the species barrier.
Yes.
And we all get a lesson in how wonderfully interconnected we are.
But here's the question. Is the coronavirus, I mean, in comparison to the number of people who have died from it, I mean, it's less than the flu virus now. So is it just...
Last year, I believe the figure was something like 80,000 people in the US died of the flu.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So apparently, having looked into this a little bit yesterday, the things you need to look out for are, does the virus become more deadly over time?
Yeah.
Which seems to be a function of things like its incubation period, how widely it spreads, whatever, who it hits. So the 1917 flu, for example, or 1921-22 flu, I should say, that killed 50 million people worldwide. Weird thing about that was it spared the old, because the old had already had flu. And it took away the young, right? So the way these viruses can pop up and then interact and mutate means that they can get pretty serious. What it seems to be so far with this one is, and you don't know because the original Wuhan authorities kind of dropped the ball and hid it, whatever, and seems to have quite a long incubation time where it can be transferred before you have symptoms and all sorts of stuff. But its lethality seems to be about 3%. Yeah. Now, that's across the world population, that'll take out a large number of people, but it's not the plague.
Right.
Right? But we don't know what it finally mutates into. We don't know. There's a whole thing about it. But what it does is, to me, I think it's a fascinating example of just how connected the world is.
Yes, I thought that was so interesting too.
Totally.
Yeah.
So British Airways was the first one to stop flying to China.
Yep.
But then you say to yourself, well, how's that going to help? Because all you need to do is fly to France and take a plane.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't really quarantine in the sense that we had, right?
Yeah.
Think about Ellis Island. The largest part of Ellis Island was the hospital. So you would get people through processing, and the minute they were ill, they would put them in various TB wards and all the rest of it, and lots of people never made it out of there. You could effectively quarantine because it was one port on one island. How do you do that in an incredibly tightly coupled network society? So what I worry about is what happens when, somebody decides that eating bats' testicles for a laugh isn't really the best thing. And then that sort of pops into a really dangerous virus.
Yes.
Because if you get the same type of spread dynamics, that could get very, very serious indeed.
I mean, on the political side of things, it's fascinating how that Xi Jinping shut down Wuhan, which is a city larger than New York City. And, people said it was akin to shutting down New York City on Thanksgiving Eve or Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And how they just pressed the off button and everything went off. I mean, that was incredible.
And also they built the giant hospital in 10 days.
I mean, hello. That was just...
I mean, that's just one of those things.
Yes.
You look at that and you just go, all right, I'm sure that the windows don't fit, but that's not really the point.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Anybody, I just imagine the British National Health Service trying to do that. I'd be ready in about, somebody's average lifetime.
Yes. I mean, the new pedestrian bridge in Providence took like 17 and a half years to build.
Oh my God, absolutely. When I lived in Baltimore, there was a bridge that they did somewhere down Charles Street, I think it was, by the train station.
Yeah.
It was just a completely ordinary bridge.
Yeah.
And it took 2.5 years to finish.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, the Allies in Germany in 1945 threw a bridge over the Rhine at Remagen under heavy fire in under 2 days and shipped the entire army across.
Yes.
We seem to have lost the art of that, but apparently China has not.
No, they have not. I mean, this is certainly the craziness and the I'm losing my word, the synonym for craziness, the anxiety and fear is really, there's a lot of xenophobia wrapped up in that too. I mean, with the tariff war and I just all this.
And then the social media side of it, and then basically government sponsored social media side of it, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, panic was the word.
I'm accusing you of inciting this, and you're doing this, and blah, 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 but what about this?
Yeah.
So the contagion channels aren't just disease, they're also mental.
I mean, Trump gets the trade war that he wants. He wins the trade war on this, right?
Well, it compounds the effect, certainly. Yeah. But what was funny today, the finance ministry in China, or the central bank, I forget which one, said, we'll just spend $170 billion to compensate.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, and it's it shows you there's something different about the Chinese attitude towards money, right?
Yeah.
It's not this thing that's an asset given by God, backed by gold, that you give to people as taxes, right? Yeah. It's literally just a credit note. That will valorize somehow in the future. So, and we don't seem to have any inflation just now, so sod it. So their way of dealing with things is just very different. I'll build a hospital in 10 days. I'll completely cushion the economic shock. Why? Because I can.
We can just push the button.
We can just do that. Now, the question is, does it work?
Yeah.
Right? The more you do kind of a kind of financial multiplier over time, the less effective it tends to be, blah, 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 But at the same time, they're still, despite the tariff war and everything else, they're still growing at 6%.
Jeez. And this will maybe not even be a blip on the radar then.
No, it'll certainly be a blip. It's probably akin to you're walking down the road with your dog, the dog goes off the road, you trip over something, you land on your knee, you hurt yourself, you get back up, you go home and somebody says, how was the walk? And you go, fine.
Yeah. Has that happened to you recently? It was very descriptive.
That was very descriptive, wasn't it? I actually did something worse than that. I hate running, right? I just pathologically hate running. But I'm now at an age whereby if I don't run, my cardio is going to give out, right?
Okay.
And I don't do enough cardio. So I've got, as you know, this 1-year-old dog. So I've started running with a dog.
Oh, I see.
It's hell. Oh my God, let me tell you, it's hell.
Yes.
And it's wonderful looking at the face of a dog who turns around and looks at you when you're running, and the dog just looks at you and goes, honestly, that's it?
Really? Yeah.
That's what you can
that's
manage?
Your pace, yeah.
You're the master? Oh, for goodness sake.
Oh, good Lord. So what were your holiday travels like? Did you have a nice break? Did you have a nice holiday? We didn't do our holiday catch-up.
Well, my brother lives in New Zealand, so we went down there.
Oh, how was it?
Because every 5 years it's my turn to go down there.
Yeah.
So we went via Australia because it was on fire.
Great.
In other words, we booked the tickets before it was on fire.
Yeah.
But we actually got to see it and experience it. And it's mad.
Yeah.
Right? An area the size of the whole of the south of England has burned.
Yeah.
The capital, Canberra, is basically its whole southern edge is on fire and it could really kick off.
Yeah.
This is still going on. There's been various attempts to spin this as, there was a big fire in the 1970s, whatever. And then it's interesting to watch like the Twitter feed on this one, because then you get people who actually know what they're talking about going, well, the 1970s one was 59,000 acres and this is 1.7 million. So I think it's an order of magnitude difference, this kind of stuff. But what was most telling about it was it reminded me of being in Delhi.
Oh, yeah.
So when you get into Delhi, the first thing you do when the plane lands is you smell burning.
Yeah.
Because there are 2 to 3 to 5 million people cooking with open fires all around the city.
Yeah.
And that's what it smelt like when you landed in Sydney. And Sydney was about 40, 50 miles away from the nearest edge of the fire, right?
Yeah.
And what we did was I had a little brainwave and I thought, well, probably staying in Sydney with air quality that's like 3 times worse than Delhi is not a good idea. But let's go to beach. So we went to Bondi Beach because the wind would blow off the beach. And of course, there was nobody there, so we got a hotel really cheap and all the rest of it. And we took some pics and we got the pics back and we're looking at them. It was meant to be a sunny day.
Yeah.
You can see all the soot in the sky.
Oh, you can. Jeez.
Yeah, and at the end of the vacation, so New Zealand sits 3.5 hours by flight time, about 1,000 kilometres away from Australia. And on the end of the vacation, I could walk out in the morning and rub my finger over the top of my brother's car and pick off the ash that had come over.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and this was big.
Yeah.
So it was one of those moments where you're like, yeah, I'm a privileged white guy. I can fly down to see my equally privileged brother, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you think that, you're okay and things are fine. And then basically you remember nature bats last.
Yes.
Every
does.
time.
Wow, that's incredible. New Zealand, because I, of course, know nothing about how winds and all that sort of stuff. So that's...
Well, neither did I till I got there.
Right.
You?
I was on a little bit of an espionage mission.
Awesome.
I was off trying to dig up some dirt on Joe Biden via Rudy Giuliani. He
nice, Rudy.
Yeah. So I was in Russia just doing a little intel work. My big takeaway from Russia was the following. Sun doesn't rise till 10, so very different than New Zealand. It sets at 4. It's super dark in the winter. So that was my big takeaway. And wow, Moscow is really rich. Like there are like super rich people there, like super duper rich.
Right.
And it's incredible the amount of how they display their wealth as well. So Putin's doing really well by them, I would assume. He gives a speech at 11:55 on New Year's Eve, and then it moves. So on the camera, you see Putin 5 minutes, and then the camera pans to Red Square for the fireworks. And Sam, my partner, who's British, said this is exactly like the Queen's speech on Christmas Eve. And it is.
Wow,
I mean, the parallels are exactly that. So,
except that Putin also does an 1.5 to 2 hour long Q&A. At some point,
where he
basically people come in and just ask him questions, and he answers them, and sometimes he likes the questions, sometimes he doesn't. But the Queen doesn't do that.
Yeah, she doesn't.
No, she doesn't. She just basically goes, "This year, my government will try and create a nicer Britain, made of nicer things." And everyone goes, "Way!"
Though she did say something about how it was a tough year because her son and her
exactly. I mean, it turns out that your second eldest son is extremely dodgy and the FBI want to talk to him.
At the very least, extremely, yes.
Exactly. And then your grandson loves the whole gig so much, he's leaving. So
all you got is William and Catherine and Kate at this point. Any good TV watching or movie watching on your long flights?
No. Well, actually, I did. I saw this amazing French submarine film. Yeah, it's something La Loupe, basically about a guy who's an incredible hearing. And you know how all these Hollywood...
way too sophisticated.
No, well, this is the thing, right? Because now that digital technology for filmmaking has dropped in price, all the rest of it, it used to be that Hollywood had this huge advantage and everybody else looked crap. Like, if you remember looking at British films, they looked like they were shot on a stage with a Steadicam, right? Not anymore. And this French film is incredible because there was a submarine flick that was done recently. I think Jerry Butler was in it and all this sort of stuff. And people who are into that sort of thing said it was really well done and blah, blah, blah. But of course, it's Hollywood. So at the end, the good guys won whatever, right? Well, the French version looked just as good, right? The politics was seriously super intense. And without giving everything away, everybody dies.
Whoa.
And it's just like, wow, that is not the Hollywood treatment on that one. So that was the one good film. Other than that, I think you also watched this. His Dark Materials.
Loved it. Yeah.
Loved it.
I love those books. So, yeah.
And they finally done justice to the book.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. Are you reading the new set of his books? his Dark Materials.
Oh, the Dust.
Yes.
The books of Dust.
Oh, sorry. The Dust.
The Dust.
Yes.
The prequels. Yeah, I've read the first one. I haven't read the second one yet.
The second one is probably maybe the same length as Piketty's new book. I mean,
yeah,
it is
no,
like
it's going to be a tough
doorstopper.
choice for me when it comes out. Then basically, an economist tells political scientists everything they already know with a twist, or I get to read Philip Pullman.
Economists are the worst.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. We'll have a big wrap up post everything that's happening if we survive everything that's happening, and catch up with everybody in just a few weeks.
Exactly, after the State of the Onion and various things.
Yes, exactly. Bye, everyone.